we were talking in the last hour about the Democrats' plans now that they have taken over the House, how Republicans in the Senate will push back. I mean, there's two sets of things, obviously, I think that we anticipate the Democrats need to do or hope that they will do and that they will do. One is, maybe three. One is to offer and vote on legislation that the Senate will ignore, but becomes the foundation of a platform for 2020. Things like maybe Medicare for all, or things like raising the minimum wage, or whatnot. But then other things that I think are that point to more structural reform, like why not reauthorize the Voting Rights Act, come up with another version of Section 5 and pass that on to the Senate and make them refuse to take it up. They will, but I hope to see that type of thing. And then, of course, the other major thing that the House can do unilaterally is provide investigations and oversight, as well as being obstructionist, I guess, simultaneously. The Senate is going to work overtime to create their narratives for their people, essentially. I don't know if they're going to dig into Benghazi again or what, but it's going to be interesting to see what the Democrats do in the House. And before we start talking about the governorships and the state houses, what's your take on Nancy Pelosi at this time? I mean, I know at least generically, you and I have both been talking about wanting and I don't know if it's even necessarily a younger Democratic leadership as much as a leadership that is more in touch with the changes that are taking place in the context of the party. And Nancy Pelosi gave a speech, I guess it was Tuesday night. I understand that all politicians, after they win an election, have to pretend like they're going to be bipartisan. There's no cost associated with it and whatnot. But in the past, she's talked about things like pay-go. And even when she was talking about the Democrats having protected pre-existing conditions, she had a very awkward way of cheering for pre-existing conditions, which I think was maybe, half in jest, but it seems like a squandered moment to remind people that by electing Democrats, they just protected Medicare and Social Security. I mean, what is your sense of what's happening? Because Nancy Pelosi sort of putting herself out there is both not a lame duck and also a transitional leader.
Well, I think she's a transitional leader. That's my take on it. I had a talk with a congressman high up in the hierarchy not too long ago about this, and his view was that Pelosi was probably safe. And the reason for that is, according to him, isn't because everybody loves Pelosi. It's just simply that this particular Congress, these 2 years going into the presidential in 2020, are anticipated to be that transition period where they're going to be bringing up people, getting them up to speed, getting them into the leadership, and then she will, I suppose, no matter what, win or lose in 2020, I think she's out. And the idea being that they need somebody to herd this situation through during this tumultuous time of these 2 years, and that Pelosi's the one with the experience to do it. Now, I don't know if that's true. That's just one person's opinion. I had sort of thought that was maybe the way it was going to go, because I don't know that they have anybody set to go into that job. Usually you have somebody who's sort of brought up, but the leadership of under Pelosi is all just as ancient as she is. And
Right.
and they did have some others. I mean, Donna Edwards was sort of slated, Chris Van Hollen. There were others, but they left to attempt or win higher office, and that were younger and had a more diverse sort of backgrounds, but they left, so they were left with this sort of old guard that's been in there forever. But I do think it's at an end. I mean, I think that her this is her last Congress that she will be Speaker, and I have little doubt that she's done at the end of it, because I just don't think they feel confident. The caucus as a full caucus, that there's somebody that they can turn to specifically to just jump in and run this thing in this particular period, which is, very volatile and extremely important. And so I think that's why they're going to stick with her for 2 years. But I do, I get the sense that they all know that this is it. Well, it has to be. She's
right.
too old. I'm old, and I'm not being ageist here because I'm old too. So, I just, there comes a point at which, you have to let go. Dianne Feinstein should have let go this time. I shouldn't digress, but I'll just say this. Kevin De Leon won a lot more votes than I would have expected. Probably some of them from Republicans who were just trying to, stick it to Feinstein. But nonetheless, should be a big sign to her that she made a mistake. Maybe she'll resign or something. I don't know. But anyway.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what if what you're saying is the case, then it'll be interesting to see who gets appointed to some of these leadership positions, right? Because presumably these are the people who are being groomed to possibly take over from Nancy Pelosi. So it's going to be very interesting, to keep an eye on that, because obviously I think there are people like you and I who want someone from the leftist most part of the Democratic caucus to take this job. And it'll be interesting to see what Pelosi, what she does, who she puts into a position to get this job, right? I guess it'd be interesting to sit down with somebody who has been through, and I don't know that there's many, but this type of process. But I would imagine we're looking for people who have like liaison positions, people who get certain committee appointments. We're looking for people who function as a whip, maybe. So this is something that we should keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks as Nancy Pelosi.
Right, and one thing to remember, I'm sorry to interrupt, but one thing to remember about these jobs in the Congress is that, the media part of it, the sort of, speaker part of it, which Nancy Pelosi's, let's face it, terrible at. She is not a good face for the Democratic caucus because she doesn't speak well. She just isn't that kind of a politician. But they have a different set of skills. This is about organizing. It's about fundraising. This is a very important part of it. They have to be able to help their caucus get enough money to win, and that's a big part of what they do. They also have to be good at counting votes, and that's a weird skill that's, very few people seem to be really good at, but it is. And they have to be good at managing a really diverse and difficult sort of coalition filled with lots of different people. That's not the same skill as being a good retail politician. So, everybody needs to keep that in mind as we watch this thing unfold.
And let me just add one more thing, and then we got to take a quick break here. The fundraising aspect of it, right? There's sort of a new wrinkle to this, it seems to me, because in the past, the fundraising was obviously dominated by people like Steny Hoyer or Nancy Pelosi, who had access to big money donors. But now we have, I don't know if we have fully ripened this, but Democratic politicians who simply have networks of small donors and can sort of bequeath some of that money to people. So it's going to be interesting to see if that in some way helps get us to more progressive leadership in the House. But we got to take a quick break. We'll talk more about that on the other end. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio, talking to the great Digby. We'll be right back.